Yeah.
Peer review is useful in its strict sense, namely in terms of catching error, right? Or raising flags, red flags with regard to certain things that don't seem quite right about the way the research is being described, checking to see if the arguments make sense and the references, whether they really support what's being said. I mean, there's all this kind of internal validation stuff, right? Where you're basically kind of judging the article on its own terms, putting itself forward as a contribution to knowledge. And that's a really important thing to do. Somebody's got to do that. And obviously, you need a certain level of competence that the author, in a sense, presents themselves as having in order to do that. So, in that sense, it's a literally peer review, right? I should be able to understand what this article is saying. Does it make sense to me? Yes or no. The mission creep occurs, and this a lot has to do with the nature of academic journals, I would say, because peer review generally occurs in the context of academic journal publication. And that's where the problems begin, because then there is this additional judgment that's made. It's a kind of a meta level judgment beyond the level of the text itself about whether this is relevant. Right? When the peer reviewer says, is this really relevant research? Is this research really contributing to what really or ought to be going on in our field? Or is this a diversion? Is this a tangent? Is this taking stuff in the wrong direction? Right? So these kinds of judgments also get made by peer reviewers, and they effectively close off lines of inquiry, because you can't, especially from the more impactful journals, right? The journals that more people in the field read, right? Because they're basically being siphoned off and marginalized into, very often journals nobody reads. So that is the mission creep. And that mission creep is often encouraged by journal editors, because the journal editors see themselves as the standard bearers of their disciplines. And they imagine their disciplines in a very Kuhn-like way, right? So they say there's a paradigm. And the paradigm is, we're in this field, and our field is devoted to these problems, and we have certain ways of solving these problems. And so I could take any paper that's submitted and I can judge it in those terms. And if it doesn't fit that, if it doesn't fit the paradigm, it doesn't belong here. And I think this is kind of where the problem is this kind of mission creep, where in a sense,